Hello. Yeah, let me just get this ready. Yeah, my name is Tharsis. I'm a researcher from Pantea. We focus on a lot of transport sector issues, a lot of transport innovation issues, and our task in the LeMO project was to organize, not alone, of course, with work done with contribution from all our partners. Well, we are supposed to organize the EU policy roadmap for big data in the transport sector. And this is, of course, probably the culmination of the past 2.5 years of work. And I'll present what our approach is and some of our first results, as well as what we're going to do with the results here. And the focus of this webinar will be primarily on the prioritization of challenges and issues, which my colleague Jayant mentioned beforehand, that we were also doing. Let's see. Go to the next. So the aim is to develop a policy roadmap to support the use of big data technology and the growth of the data economy in the transport sector. This is a unique sort of merging of two industries. Well, it's not entirely new, but we want to push it further as we see a lot of developments around the world as to how to bring these two, data sector or ICT sector and the transport sector together. We want the EU as well to define its role in the global market. And we have developed a fairly standard methodology, which Rajendra has also discussed beforehand, which is firstly to define a list of issues to be dealt with. You know, it's often the case that once you look at a problem, more problems come up. Whenever you look at an issue, just, you know, hundreds and hundreds of problems comes up. And Rajendra also mentioned, I think we had about 160 different issues that we identified through the literature review and the case studies which were done beforehand. And our work here was to reduce that to a manageable, amount, so that we can work on the recommendations on how to actually deal with these issues. And if the recommendations also follow a fairly similar workflow, and we've at this point prioritized the list of measures, but the work which will be done in the coming months will be to validate this policy roadmap. So we have, of course, carried out some surveys to identify the opinions and feedback from stakeholders, and now we have put them all together in one document, which will be published soon, D 4.3, and that will be then validated in D 4.4. So what I will present here is how we have worked to identify the key list of issues to deal with in our roadmap, as well as the recommendations or measures which would address those issues. So from the long list of issues which we had, we reduced that to 22 very condensed issues, which we then conducted a survey about. At the current stage, we have 31 respondents from different sectors. So public sector is the most represented, if you can see on the pie chart on the left. Public sector followed by the ICT sector and knowledge institutes. Unfortunately, we have at this point very few from goods and services and the transport sector, as well as stakeholder organizations, but we hope to get more input soon. We also asked to sort of give, to understand their experience. We asked questions on how they are related to big data. What do they do with it? Or are they using it? Are they researching? Are they supplying? And so on. And so we can see in the second figure that most of them use big data in some way or another. The country of operations are mostly within their own country, but there are some which are, well, multinational or within the EU or even globally. And we see as well from the stakeholders that, or the respondents, that most of them are involved or have experience with the road transport mode, but also public transport. And quite a few work on freight transport issues as opposed to passenger transport. But it's fairly well represented, except for aviation, which is probably a very niche transport sector. So the experts provided quite a lot of interesting input, not just in terms of answering the questions, but also providing free text input. For each issue, each of the 22 issues, we asked whether, a very simple question actually, but I think very easy to understand, but it could also be complicated to think about. How limiting is this issue to the further application of big data in the transport sector? And there is just a scale, not limiting to extremely limiting, or we gave the option as well for them to refuse to comment. And of course, there's as I mentioned, we wanted to prioritize the issues, so we gave a score to each of the answers, 1 to 5, and we calculated an average score and kept only the issues with a score of 3.0 and above. And so I'll show what we have in the end. So this is the outcome. This is the aggregate score over the 31 respondents, and we have identified 14 issues which we will primarily deal with in the roadmap, and 8 other issues which we will keep as a backup. But for whatever reason, it was not deemed to be as important as the top 14. We also hope if we can gather more more input, that we will be able to provide stakeholder-based prioritization. But as of yet, I think it's not very, it's not a good idea yet, since we only have so few. But nevertheless, we can just sort of display some of the top 5 issues according to organization type. The public sector identifies competition, privacy and data protection, data ownership, data standardization, and surveillance as the top 5 issues. The ICT sector identifies privacy, data protection, collecting data, liability, change management, and data infrastructure as the top issues. As you can see also, data infrastructure is important to the ICT sector, but on average is not considered an important issue to deal with, considering the whole set of respondents. And the Knowledge Institutes as well, they have a set of issues which they prioritize. Some are important to both stakeholder organizations, public sector or ICT or Knowledge Institutes, especially the top 3, which can be expected. Now, what will we do with this? So what we have in the current stage of our, let's say, draft roadmap is we discuss the issue, and we provide tentative recommendations. The recommendations still need to be refined together with our stakeholder group, our advisory board, and that will be done in a workshop setting, so that we can get really into the details of what implications each recommendation may have. And this will be done by probably the end of September. Yes, so this is all we have. So some next steps. We want more survey responses. So if you have not filled it in, please do so. Also encourage your colleagues, perhaps in different departments, to fill it in. It is not too complicated to fill in, and if there are issues which you don't have any expertise on or refuse to comment on, you can of course skip that with a no comment answer. So the link to the survey has also been emailed to you. Yeah, so that's that. We will finalize and validate the recommendations in the next task, 4.5. We'll be using a methodology which we call SPADE, which is a very participative but also concrete way of dealing with different recommendations and prioritizing recommendations. Yes, and deliverable 4.4 will include the final version of the roadmap. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.